in the Sahara.
Okay, so that's an important distinction for our viewers. There is two separate things going on up there in the desert.
Yes.
There's on the one hand a Tuareg rebellion, which has been on and off, and on the other hand...
Respecting democracy. Respecting the outward forms of democracy.
But there's also Islamist jihadists up there.
Yes, well, you pays your money, it takes your choice. I mean, the Tuareg have had for many years, have had serious grievances, and from not just the Malian government, but from many of the governments in the Sahel, and lots of them feeling aggrieved, went to work in Libya, were hired by Gaddafi because he gave them jobs and when Gaddafi fell to pieces, those many arms were at loose ends in Libya, didn't stay at loose ends for very long. They ended up in the middle of the Sahel, in the middle of the desert. So the Tuaregs who had been working for him got these arms, and that gave them even greater reason to take the army on, and they were quite successful in doing so. And ATT, as he was known, the president, basically was Mr. Nice Guy, Mr. Soft Guy, and had resisted all kinds of suggestions, especially from the French, and I suspect from the Americans as well, that he ought to prosecute this Tuareg rebellion with more force. So, but as I say, to the degree, what's unfortunate is not that he's leaving power, but why didn't they wait until the election next month, and why didn't they wait until June when he would have been ushered out and the new man ushered in?
They've been losing garrison towns for the last couple of weeks. A couple of them fell, so I think there was this sense of urgency and of abandonment militarily. But the other thing, there are a couple complicated things going on. One is that there's this Western focus on Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, but there's still some question as to whether they're really implanted among the Tuareg and in that area, whether it's opportunists that are just sort of taking the name to conduct kidnapping operations for revenue. So it sort of depends on the perspective of what the real problem is. There's also this question of the Tuareg coming back from Libya with a lot of arms. They did, but it's not exactly an area where it's hard to arm oneself. In other words, there's all these factors that have complicated and exacerbated a problem that's fundamentally there. And I think the major issue is that it's a problem, and it's an area that just demands a regional approach. It's a problem that overlaps so many boundaries that it just cannot be addressed without cooperation among a group of countries that historically don't cooperate well and still have not really risen to the occasion to do that. So
our friend Nicholas Norbrook from the Africa Report on Twitter saying, Mali has been brewing for some time. Army anger at lack of government support to fight Tuaregs fleeing Libya, heavily armed by Gaddafi. And Ron Linker, that really is one of the aspects. It's sort of the ghost of Libya hanging over this. Gaddafi, who'd in the past had sometimes brokered agreements between the Tuaregs and the governments in the Sahelian region.
And also, I understand there are significant economic ties between the two countries, Libya and Mali. At least the former regime in Libya supported Mali, kept it going. So now that has fallen away, has been gone, this whole country is going down the drain, it seems. And the soldiers, from what I understand, were incensed because the government did not do enough for their plight. They've lost a lot of soldiers, and the president and the government were not giving them the proper dues. That's what that what triggered it.
And again, Mali hailed as an example for Africa, a country where for 2 decades after a brutal military dictatorship, incumbents had since kept their promises. When it was time to step aside, they did so. Today, most politicians keeping a low profile, and the putschist soldiers not behaving very well, it seems. Residents, both cowed, but at the same time frustrated by the looting.
People are afraid because of the soldiers. Often they seize what's in people's cars, or they make you get out and take the car away. Or sometimes they even break into shops and vandalize them.
We want them to hold transparent elections. and those who win to stay in power, because we prefer civilians to the military.
And Vibeke Knoop-Raslin, your thought?
There is a Norwegian family in Bamako right now. They tried to take a plane 2 days ago, but the airport was closed.
Still closed as of this Friday.
Yes, but they don't seem afraid at all. They say it's very quiet, it's very calm. And they don't seem scared in any way. And I also think that this coup seems rather strange because we don't really know what they want to do. Or now they are saying that they have arrested almost the whole government, but they say that they are safe. They don't want to kill them. And the president has disappeared. We don't know where he is. And well, there is also another aspect that Norway is very preoccupied by. It's that this Mali and more countries around the region seems again to have a big drought, and there will be probably a new immense hunger catastrophe like last year, and this time it might touch 15 million people. So I think maybe many of the people there are more preoccupied to get something to eat than to...
The rebellion in the north was already making it difficult to prepare for that. And now with the coup, it's going to even be worse in terms of NGOs and humanitarian organizations.
And that concern with poverty is an important one. Jonathan Randall, when there were elections, turnout was never very high in Mali.
Well, it's true of many countries, including our own, my own, the United States. So one can't really criticize them on that. I think what the worrying aspect is, yes, Gaddafi had this dream of the United States of the Sahel. Yes, the area is so enormous that international cooperation is absolutely necessary. Yes, also the French, although very interested, have been trying to get out of that part of Africa for a long time. So, and yes, the United States is tempted to try to fill some of those shoes, and this has to be very finely tuned, because the danger is going to be that the United States will come in very heavy-handed fashion, or that the French will come back. I mean, none of these things are bad, but this has to be handled with great dexterity, and because it requires international cooperation. The West should be careful about not trying to take it over, not allowing itself to be accused of neocolonialism. The United States, for instance, had an Africa Command, which was set up for quite some time ago, and for a long time...
They've been training Malian soldiers as well.
Yes, but they haven't headquartered it in West Africa because they know that could be very badly interpreted. And for once, the American military has been very light on the ground and somewhat subtle. I mean, unlike Central Command, let's not go into Iraq and Afghanistan, but it's very important that kind of...
To strike the right balance.
Yeah.
Well, they actually were trying to get a headquarters somewhere in Africa, and they couldn't because popular opinion just wouldn't really permit it. And as a result, they have it has been a command that's been much more in terms of training and cooperation with the
on the ground.
Yeah.
And the French, the French used to be very nervous about the Americans. They finally coordinated. Both countries have coordinated. So this is a setback.
It is a setback, and we're going to look at one other issue, which is Syria, one that we've talked about on a weekly basis for the past year. And it's been another Friday of defiance and bloodshed. Amateur video appeared to show heavy gunfire in Homs this Friday, with other scenes of urban warfare claimed in cities such as Daraa. Thursday alone, human rights groups claimed 40 killed inside that country. The UN's refugee agency launching an appeal for money to deal with the huge outflow of Syrians fleeing their country. Meanwhile, in Brussels, sanctions slapped on the wife of Syria's president and 3 other family members, including Asma al-Assad's mother, as well as other members of the inner circle in Damascus, a travel and asset freeze that has its limits. That's because 36-year-old Asma al-Assad is British. And it was interesting today because Vibeke, the British Foreign Secretary in Brussels, saying, well, we can't really prevent her from coming, but we don't think she'll show up.
No, maybe she shouldn't. But the picture, the image of Basma has been rather changing, because in the beginning, well, she's rather beautiful, and it seemed to be a very young, modern couple. And then she was called the Rose of the Desert. And now she has kept a very low profile for years. And now she has got the spotlight on her again for two reasons. The first thing was that she approved publicly what her husband was doing. And the second was all the emails that were published. I think it was by The Guardian.
Let's look at some of those emails right now.
Yeah.
Last week, we discovered that she likes shopping. And one email intercepted by The Guardian, there it is. I've just been notified that we have some stunning Christian Louboutin styles coming at the end of February. Those are shoes, by the way. These are really iconic pieces for spring and some fabulous styles. That email happening as the siege of Homs had already begun.
So now she has changed name again.
And she's changed her name on...
No. How people call her.
How people
now
call
it's Marie Antoinette.
Marie Antoinette, or Imelda Marcos, since it's shoes. But the emails sometimes as well.
It's also happening at a time when the Syrian economy is being devastated by the unrest and by the sanctions that have been imposed on it. So you really do have a Marie Antoinette sort of schema going on in terms of what the common people and what the people on the street are living through and what the elites are.
And those emails, by the way, sometimes slightly saccharine, especially when it's exchanges between the president and the first lady. This is the best reform any country can have, that you told me where you will be. We are going to adopt it instead of the rubbish laws of parties, elections, and media. This after Asma had told her husband that she'd be finishing at 5 p.m. It's
horrible as a PR campaign, beyond belief. Yeah, I mean that was the end of it. Of course, any credibility to that regime, whatever it all still had, was gone. I mean,
is this just a publicity stunt, though? Slapping sanctions, slapping a travel ban on a woman who can, in any case, travel to Britain.
It's. I think it's symbolic, of course, but it shows that maybe it even shows that the European Union is getting more desperate, because all other sanctions are not making any difference there. And just to put out this,
the oil sanctions are apparently the ones that are doing the most harm. I mean, those are totally symbolic.
Well, there's another problem with Syria now, because one of the well-known organizations for human rights, Human Rights Watch, have just made a report saying that the opposition is using the same methods, torture, etc., as the regime. So it's a bit difficult now to know who you shall support. Of course, you won't support the regime.
A final word on this from Jonathan Randall.
Well, the fact of life, this is going on for a year. I see no end to it. And this regime has been preparing for just this kind of thing since it came to power in 1970. So, I mean, these are tough guys. They've got nowhere to go. Their backs against the wall. And shopping news or not, that's not going to... They have no shame. They know what they want to do, and that is to save their necks and stay in power. And nobody's figured out a way to stop them.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Jonathan Randall, I want to thank you. I want to thank Vibeke Knoop Raschlin, Judah Grunstein, and Ron Linker. Thank you for being with us here for The World This Week. Stay with us. Coming up next, it's time for business. Marcus Carlson will be joining you with the profile of the new boss at the World